Yeah, I'm
All
trying
right,
to be
Jared.
there, man.
You're on, Jared. Go for it, man.
Cool. Am I the host? I see
Yeah.
I keep seeing the admit. Okay. Well, I'm letting folks in as I go.
Yeah.
All
Me
right.
too.
Well, amazing folks at the Real Dad Book Club. We have the amazing Dr. Daniel Black here. Dr. Black is an author, professor of African American Studies at Clark Atlanta University. Books include The Coming, Perfect Peace, They Tell Me of a Home. We did here. Tonight,
That's Broadway.
let me see. Let me get my blur off here. And tonight we're talking about Black on Black, his latest book here. He's the winner of the Distinguished Writer Award from the Middle Atlantic Writers Association and has been nominated for the Townsend Prize for Fiction, the Ernest J. Gaines Award, and the Georgia Author of the Year Award. He was raised in Blackwell, Arkansas, and lives in Atlanta, GA. And we're gonna go ahead and get started. Let's see here. Just the first question, Dr. Black. What can you tell us about Black on Black? Like, what is it about? Like a brief synopsis of what it's about. Oh, you muted, Dr. Black.
You muted.
Has anybody had a chance to read some of the book? Okay. The thing I think I'd say is that this book asks us as Black people to look at Black institutions, the church, the school, HBCUs, etc., and for us to evaluate what they mean to us, even things, if we want to keep them, get rid of them, if we want to birth some new ones, because we have some values, some ideas, some ideologies that are perpetuated in these institutions that are killing us, right? Like the Black church. The Black church has done a marvelous, marvelous thing in the history of Black America. But some of the stuff it teaches is killing us. And so we got to get bold enough to say, hey, listen, this idea that if you gay, you go into hell, this idea that Jesus is white, this idea, we got to be bold enough to know that in checking the church, that's not the same thing as checking God, right? Even HBCUs, like, do we support them? Do we send Black kids to them? We know they exist. We got that. But the notion is, what has been their real impact upon us, as a people? And another institution, which I call an institution, and that is the idea of manhood and masculinity itself. And the extent to which we need to check manhood and masculinity. And this is important, brothers, because the idea of womanness, womanhood, femininity, has evolved 50 miles over the last 50 years. What a woman is, what a woman can do, what a woman can be, how a woman understands herself, how a woman sees herself, how she values her body. The list goes on and on and on. But the idea of manhood in the last 50 years has not shifted at all. We still think men are protectors, providers, heads of household. It's the same thing. There are a few of us, and I'm sure this includes many of you on here, who have personal notions of how we're pushing manhood to change. But societally, for the most part, we're raising Black boys with the same idea of masculinity that their grandfathers had. And I'm voting for that to shift. I'm voting for that to change. I'm saying we need a wider definition of manhood, wider. We need a new one. We need definitions of manhood that don't include power dynamics. We need definitions of manhood that's not an issue of how we're protecting somebody else, how we're taking care of somebody else. And we need to imagine men as men who don't necessarily look like us. So this book, Black on Black, is exactly that. Black on Black on Black on Black on Black on Black on Black. And that is, as you think about Black people and Black things and Black institutions, right, and Black issues, what is it we want to do? How do we want to change at least our world for us in terms of our people? Yeah.
I want to, you kind of hit on some of the points that I think think one of our brothers here wants to ask about. Ishmael, did you want to go ahead and ask your question about identity?
Yeah, but before we get into that, I want to touch on the chapter of the book when you was the trial and the massacre of Black bodies.
Oh, yes,
Can
sir.
you tap into the dehumanization and the labor of Black bodies and the generational of it?
Yeah, and of course, that's what I'm hoping I do it in the essay, right? And the point of that essay is for us to get very clear and very conscious. I don't mean for us just to know it, because we know it happens. We know violation of the Black body happens. We see it on TV. We know that. I'm not talking about that. I want us to be conscious of why it happens, of what the Black body has meant in the Western imagination. I want us to be clear that the Black body represents a kind of cultural currency, a desirability, that there's a pleasure element in terms of why people want and people beat and people destroy and people want to stomp on the Black body. Sometimes America wants to stomp on the Black body because it cannot possess it. Right? And we've got to understand sometimes people's reaction to the Black body is because they cannot figure out, how do you own it now that slavery is over? Right? And we have to understand how valuable this Black body is in this place called America. If we don't understand that, my brother Ishmael, if we're not careful, we'll treat the Black body the same way white folks treat the Black body. We'll talk about niggas, right? Right? We'll talk about, I can fuck you up, right? See, all of this is us having no more value for the Black body than those who brought the Black body here. See, we as Black men ought to be talking up to and about one another in ways that make us look holy and divine, right? The ability to say, good morning, brother Ishmael, man, you look like God to me. See, that's not the same thing as what up, my nigga. No. You see what I'm saying? We've got to create a new paradigmatic structure for how we honor our own bodies and our own selves in the midst of this insanity. Without us doing that, right? Without us doing that, we are perpetuating the same ugliness. We're perpetuating the same violence upon one another that we think we hate.
Okay.
So what do you think about the essay, brother Ishmael? What do you think about it?
I thought it was to the point. It was powerful. It was just straightforward at the end of the day. Because what I equate it to is like football, especially the Black running back. How they value the Black running back, and then when he start breaking down, he becomes devalued. He becomes worthless, in a way. So it's like I said, it was on point.
Yeah, I appreciate that, brother.
Yes. All right. Did we have any other questions before I start diving into some of mine? Y'all know I got them prepared and I'm ready. Any other top of mind before I get started?
I'm so honored to talk about I'm so honored to talk to Black men about this book.
I'll Jared, before you go into your question, I'll go into my identity politics, because I know that's the big talking thing right now. And I know with your book, you plant a flag appreciating Blackness, but what is your thoughts on the debate against identity politics?
I'm not sure I understand the specific question you're asking me.
I was going to say, elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah. Oh, you know how right now is a big debate on how identity politics really doesn't help the cause, not the cause, but the cause of movement of people.
Got you.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I do have thoughts on that. The first thing is, this is what I meant by loosening the boundaries of what we mean by men and masculinity, right? Because we've got to be able to be a unified people without being a homogeneous people. We've got to be able to be a unified people without us all having to look alike, right? Like a bouquet of flowers share the same vase, but they don't share the same bloom. Y'all feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we have to be like, it cannot be so that we must figure out how we all are going to look like roses in order to be in the vase. Right? The beauty actually of the bouquet is the differences juxtaposed to one another. And if we can get this clear in terms of identity politics, right? Because some of this is us falling prey to the trip of the trap of the binary. You either this or you that if you're in America, right? And I'm saying we've got to have men who are tall, men who are short, men who are Christian, black men who are Muslim, who are all in on this project of liberating black people, right? We've got to have black gay men. We got to have black trans men. We got to have black uncles. We got to have black daddies. We got to have black men who got white mamas, black men who got white dad. See, for me, if we can get out of the game playing of difference, we can build a coalition. And that's what we need. We need a coalition of men who carry masculinity, but the masculinity does not have to be identical. And see, I think this is important because also, I don't want us to think that something's wrong with masculinity. You know, everybody's talking about toxic masculinity, and there is toxic masculinity, but there's also healthy masculinity. I don't want black boys thinking something is wrong with being masculine. Y'all feel what I'm saying? It's nothing wrong with being masculine. It is something wrong with being toxically masculine. And then I'm gonna go here, which I'm gonna just drop and leave it. And also, if there's a femininity, there's a toxic femininity. Which at some point we're gonna need to talk about, but that ain't what we're talking about tonight, right? And so I'm very, 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 very committed to us being able to be different and still being in the same brotherhood.
Yeah. So bars. And I think we touched on and I talked with someone. Oh, I'm leading a group of boys. I need to get them to make them read your book so we can have a discussion with them. But I'm leading a group of boys now in Kappa League, my junior auxiliary that's tied to my fraternity. And when I think about imagination and what you were talking about in Massa Don't Leave Me. Yeah. You said the last and most insidious sign of Black self-rejection is our embracing of someone else's imagination.
Absolutely.
Said you vehemently disagree with the idea that our social condition should prevent us from the ability to dream. On the surface, right? This disagreement seems like an easy thing, but I don't think that most of us agree with it. Can you discuss how we've embraced someone else's imagination and the ways that hinders us from our ability to dream, specifically as Black men?
Yes. I'll say 3 ways very quickly. One of those, again, I'm gonna go back, is our ability to call each other niggas. I think if a Black man can call another Black man nigga, you are in the white imagination. Because that's not our term, that's somebody else's term. And if I have to borrow somebody else's term to describe my affinity for my brother, right, then somebody else's imagination is governing my process. That's what I believe. That's what I believe. Now, I'm sure it's controversial, so y'all jump on in.
Look, I've never heard that angle. You know, I have kind of, but it makes sense when you think about it from the terms from the idea of imagination, right? Because it's like when me and my students talk about me and my wife, right? When we were talking about me and my wife, and we talked about accounts, like there was a thing that was like, should everything be 50-50? Should you have separate accounts, etc.?
Right.
We have everything is joint. And they were like, well, what if she runs off with everything that you have? And I asked them, why would I even marry someone who would do that to me? I was like, if your starting point is your demise, if your starting point is the fact that this person could possibly leave you, then you already kind of start with your own demise.
That's right.
Mind. And so when you say
and there's another piece to that, Achilles.
Yeah. So when you say that, like when you use someone else's terms to describe your brother, then you are already in the white imagination.
That's right.
Like that is the foundation for that conversation. You know what I mean?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And I'm gonna even jump into what you were just saying. If I marry a woman and she quote unquote runs off with everything I have, I can build it again. I built it once.
Yeah.
In other words,
That's
if I'm not
exactly what I thought.
careful, I'm walking in fear, right? And it's the issue's not her. The issue's not her. The issue's me. If she walks off with everything I have, take it. Because you don't take my ability to do it. You simply take the product.
Yeah.
Right? We'll build it again.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Listen, if you disturb an anthill, what do the ants do?
They rebuild
In fact, they rebuild it by the time you get in the house and sit down. But it's deep, though.
Yeah,
they don't stand there looking around wondering who did it.
Hey.
They know who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's heavy. Did anyone have some pushback? Because I mean, I know the N word is a thing now. I see the hands. Come on.
Yeah, but it's not a pushback, but it's an intriguing dynamic of this conversation, because I'm gonna put assimilation into the conversation. Is that a part of that too?
Yes.
Because, to fit into this American construction, you have to assimilate to a standard of Americanization to fit in.
Are you saying to use it is it as a form of assimilation, or to not use it as a form?
I'm posing that question because, again, he alluded to like using other people's imagination, and I threw assimilation into the pot because, again, to assimilate is, again, you're not stealing, but you're utilizing the identity of being the construction of what to make it in as an American.
I think so. I'm gonna throw something else in here. Well, I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna hold this. I'm gonna hold it. I want to hear what the other brothers have to say. I'm gonna hold this, and I'll bring it back because Dr. Black might go there. So go ahead.
Please go there.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Hey, everybody. So, I'm not gonna say it's pushback, but I was gonna ask the same thing in the sense of this is me getting into semantics more so, where I know, one, if we've adopted the dominant culture's language, mannerisms, and cultures to a certain degree, that's what assimilation is for us being here, then on one hand, I definitely see that we're kind of living in their imagination in a sense. Two, on the other hand, I look at it as, I know growing up, I'm not going to say I use the word because people were offended by it or people were rubbed the wrong way. I'm going to say I grew up in a subculture within a culture within a culture. So we have the American culture. Then I grew up in New York, which is that there's another culture. And then I grew up in the South Bronx. So the subculture within a culture within a culture, right? And so for me growing up, I didn't see anything wrong with the word. There was no negative connotation attached to the word. And there is part of me, like you said, that goes, well, this word was created for one purpose. But then for me growing up, I go, we repurpose words all the time. So why is the linchpin for society, or the cornerstone that we are going to kind of like the hill that we're dying on, why is this one word, right? And so I see both sides, and I'm glad I came into this conversation because I love to learn new things. And the way you just phrased it really hit me hard, because living in someone else's imagination. And the final piece I'll add to it is what you said is reminiscent of what I heard. First person I heard say it was D.L. Hughley, where he said the most dangerous person a Black man can live is in a white man's mind, in a white person's mind, and their perception of us and how they treat us. And now I see some sort of the possibility of a projection from our end, the way they perceive us. We then either self-fulfilling prophecy, or we manifest that representation of us either onto each other, or we just carry that on our shoulders, kind of.
Yeah. You know, the only thing I'll say in response to that, brother, is here's your catch. If we repurposed it, right, and people do say this, then white people can use it too.
Hey. Hey, that is interesting. Yeah.
then they can call us nigga too, because it's been repurposed.
So
And I don't know anybody who agrees with that.
look, and so when so I've had a tumultuous relationship with the word, right, as well. I've learned and heard different things that always kind of push and move me. And I ask that of my students when I request that for them. So that was one of my caveats, right? You can say it outside. We understand this idea of repurposing. I sometimes still say it because I grew up the same way every now and then, right? But in this classroom, we don't call each other N words and B's because we call each other brothers and sisters in there, right? And then the kind of the question was, when you utilize it, what are you saying? What's the interlocutor, right? And a lot of them would say fellow person who has had these similar struggles. And so when I think about like this idea of the imagination that you live in, possibly, right? Because we're discussing it, the imagination that you live in, then when you talk about this culture within a culture within a culture, right? And or my homeboy would say system within a system, right? It's still the system. And so you are like bound to that area through that language and lexicon. You know what I mean? That they want you in to a certain degree, right? And please push back, etc. George, I'll pass it to you, and then I'll go a little bit deeper with one of my questions of where y'all are. Yeah.
Peace. Phenomenal conversation already, right? And I got to be honest with you, as being a Latino male, brand male, and projects, right? The N word has always been synonymous with any type of and kind of like what my brother Ish was talking about, assimilation, right? Being accepted.
Right.
And honestly speaking, in any situation or lack thereof, when you're using something that is to take power away from one, you're giving power to the word itself. So which means that even if you try to say, well, no, we use it for the endearment,
Right.
that's still giving power to the puppeteering of
Absolutely.
the reason why it was even originated. So
Absolutely.
I think, honestly speaking, and I think, what changed my mind, I was 19. I was working with working in an organization with a bunch of group youth, and we showed them the nigger application. Changed my whole life because, again, I'm a lyricist. I'm an MC, spoken word artist, going off the head. That's one of the words that you brace together to make things. So to me, the understanding of looking at this application was so disgusting to me that I said, damn, I could never and ever, if I ever have love for somebody, it's kind of like looking at a female and saying, damn, I love you, bitch. Right? It don't matter how you mean it. The meaning of the word is already put out there. So for us to kind of like try to like transformers and transform what we see in front of us just to kind of give power in a better way, there's no betterment in it, right? So it's just kind of like the thought process, and you touched upon it when you did your introduction. Religion itself has tricked us in so many ways for so many years, right? And we always what's one of the first things that we talk about, right? Whenever somebody's going through something, somebody does you wrong. Oh, well, turn the other cheek. The meek inherit the earth. Hey, be submissive and you'll gain all that is to weaken us. While there's other people that read that same scripture and see it totally different. So when they're talking about, for the most part, the N-word, religion, there are a lot of things that we have throughout history tried to break apart to different specimens so that we could use it in a better way. I just say don't use it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So anytime, like, for the most part, whenever I'm talking to my youth and my youth are in front of me, and now, I deal with people on parole and probation. So sometimes when they talking like, nah, hold on, do me a favor, don't do that in my presence. Let's make sure that we respecting each other. You may not see it as disrespect now, but historically speaking, it's always going to be disrespectful. So I think that it's an awkward conversation, is a conversation of power. We just got to be very transparent as to what it is. It's just kind of like, if there's a word that emasculates somebody or makes somebody feel poor or whatever it is, there's no power in using that exact same word with a different definition. The word already has a definition. So that's just my take on it, you know what I mean? But I think, historically speaking, our mentality has already been formulated into certain things where we just living in the projects. My whole thing was, I'm gonna live and die for ruckus. I'm gonna cut people's faces. I'm gonna stomp people out. I'm from the Lower East Side. And then you start realizing, like, damn, hold on, Rutgers was a slave owner. So there's no empowerment in the fact that what we celebrate is not in any way powerful to us. It's just more so we got to separate and say, nah, that's not good for us. It's just like eating pork. We know that's not good. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to eat different types of pork and say, nah, that pork is better for me. It's just not good. You know what I mean? So that's just my take on it.
Jerome? And feel free also, folks, because this is we mentioned it, but that is definitely another part of what's the name of that chapter, Dr. Black, about the Black church? What is it? The Black church.
Prayer won't fix this.
Prayer won't fix this. Yeah. So definitely I appreciate that, George, taking us that way too. So add that in there too if you guys feel free, because I got some questions for that. Go ahead, Jerome.
Yeah, brother. I never got to check your book out, but I will. I'm just finishing up the narrations of Frederick Douglass. And he pretty much spoke in the 1800s to what we're speaking to today. One of his best quotes was, why would you invite me to speak at your 4th of July independence?
Right.
Are you a hypocrite? Are you being funny? Are you what kind of person would do that when it doesn't represent me and my people are still enslaved? One of the issues I heard brother speak on, and I also agree, is that one of the astounding things about African Americans through slavery, we are the most simulated group of people in the society. I thought it would be the Irish, the Italians. It's the African American. And so we simulate so much of it that we don't even get a clear picture of who we are. So when you speak about us being a Black man and speaking to each other as kings and queens and respecting one another, it goes a long way. Like George was saying, I grew up in the South Bronx, and we have very little regards for each other's life coming up in the streets. Very little regards. We were not taught to respect or honor each other's lives. We weren't. We were taught to hurt each other. We were taught that, he ain't nothing but an end. You know what I'm saying? And society taught us that. They put that into our communities for us to believe that.
Absolutely. I'm trying to hold my tongue.
Go ahead, Paul. Yeah. And then we'll cut you loose, Dr. Black, after Paul.
Okay. I definitely want to say, let me lower this hand thing here. Two things that really stood out to me was, one, the turn the other cheek thing. And it's interesting. I just had a conversation with my students today. And when we talked about the turn the other cheek thing, I reminded them the notion of violence, right? And I used what's going on in Palestine, between Palestine and Israel. And I reminded them that if you do respond with violence, if you kill me and I kill you, you have family members that love you that are potentially going to want to kill me and vice versa. And I said, if we carry on in that process, we're going to bury a lot more people that need to get buried. And we end up with a situation where I shared a video with them where there was two mothers who had never met. One mother, her daughter was Palestinian, and she was a suicide bomber. So she went into a mall and she blew it up and she killed the other lady's daughter. And in the conversation that they had, they were arguing. And the lady was like, the suicide bomber's daughter was like, your people did such and such. And the mother, the other mother whose daughter was a victim, she kept telling her, why are you saying you people? She said, I don't know you. I never met you. I don't know you. If it wasn't for this moment, we would have never interacted. And looking at the turn the other cheek, not in the sense of letting people do what they want to do, but in the sense of being responsible and it might sound crazy, it's an oxymoron, but being responsible with your violence, right? Where there's going to come a time where you need to defend yourself, protect yourself and the people you love. But then it's also a time where you need to, this is not worth it, right? And then the second thing I was going to say, going back to repurposing, it's interesting. And like I said, I've always wondered why, when it comes to the N word, repurposing has always been like, there's always been pushback, right? And then the reason it's always plagued my mind is because I think about other things in history that have been repurposed, which we then go, okay, yeah, we accept, right? And one of the conversations I recently had with my students, because we're in the Civil War era, is the flag that everyone sees as the Confederate flag is the Confederate battle flag, which was used at the end, towards the end of the war. We don't see it again until 1930, so much so that when Senator Livingston, who's a Southern Democrat, when he wanted to use the flag as a response to desegregation, he had to have one specially made because you couldn't find one in the United States. And when I have that conversation with them, it's interesting that flag ultimately, when repurposed for desegregation as a response, a literal response to segregation, people forget that they forget the history of it. And so they attach it to the Civil War, not realizing that nobody was carrying it. Like, it was a flag, it was the biggest L symbol of all time. And so for me, when I think about repurposing, going back to the N-word, it's always interesting. And again, and the last thing I'll say is I'll be very transparent. And me growing up in the city, I grew up jaded because I had teachers who were always on me about the way I spoke, the way I dressed. And for me, as I'm processing what you just said, I realized that was a pushback for me, right? It was, don't dress like this, don't say this, don't do this. And then my response was, as a youth, oh, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do exactly what you don't want me to do. And now that I'm living in Georgia, you would think that I grew up totally differently, because I don't hear that word at all. Working in my school, working with my students, I don't hear anybody use, when I'm walking outside, I don't hear it at all. And I wonder, now that you say it, because now about the imagination, are the people here in Georgia reshaping the imagination? Because when I tell you it's night and day, the way they carry themselves, and again, this is not for everybody, but the way they carry themselves, the way they speak to each other, the way they interact with each other, it's a totally different feel and vibe. And the fact that I don't hear that word is a stark contrast to how I grew up in New York City. And so that's all I gotta say.
What did you have to say, Dr. Black?
I would just say two things very, very quickly, so we can move on. And that is, one of them, I think, is that we have to go a little deeper and ask ourselves, even not just whether or not we use the word, but why we want to. What is it we want to say to each other that word seems to be doing? Like, what work is that word doing that seemingly no other word in the world can do? Right? Well, what does it signify among us? The second thing that I think is extremely important is we've got to ask ourselves, why can't we either find or create a word that out of our own inspiration, out of our own imagination, out of our own soul, describes my brother? No person can tell me what my brother means to me. In fact, for me to borrow a term from a man who clearly hated us and to try to repurpose it is really the sign of how much I love not my brother, but a sign of how much I love the one from whom I'm taking this word. That's who I love, because I'm borrowing a term that he used to demean me, to try to flip it. But the point is, why would I want to flip it? I want to give him back that crap. I'm smart enough to come up with a term for how I want to embrace and love my own brother. I'm smart enough to do that.
Yeah. So in speaking with repurposing, so in Prayer Won't Fix This, what to do with the Black church, you said for Black people not to refer to their own literary tradition when they search for the word of God is quintessential self-hatred. And I've been thinking about that, forever, right? We've talked about, me and you have talked about over dinner, like we don't even know where like a Black man go, where does a 36-year-old Black man go to find out how to be a 36-year-old Black man? So this idea, the spirit of like imagination and reimagining the word of God through our own words is something that's running through here. Can you describe the agency we would be taking back by sanctioning Black authored work as the word of God? And what does it mean to dare to imagine ourselves holy?
It is the most dangerous thing in America we could do, which is why we haven't done it.
Come on now.
And that is the most dangerous thing in America we could do is to decide that we can speak for God too. Just like any other culture, we can speak for God too. Let me tell you what God said to me, and I can write it. It is a dangerous, and the most liberating thing would be for us to write our own scripture. Here's what God said to me, for me and my people. In fact, something is wrong with the people who always look to another culture for what God said. To always look to somebody else to tell you what God said means you believe that God doesn't like you. And in fact, you must believe that you're God's error. Because if God liked you, God would have spoken directly to you. And so this full-scale embracing of the Bible, my problem is not the embracing of the Bible. It's the embracing of the Bible as the only thing God said. That's absolutely positively problematic. And for us not to believe that I, as a writer, could write scripture. That lets you know how psychologically demented we are. Because white people believe they can write scripture and have done it. Indians believe it and have done it. Y'all see what I'm saying? So the notion that we as a people, I can't tell you what God said, the hell I can't.
Carlton, you look like you were chomping at the bits there. You got something, Carlton?
Well, I didn't want to go before Brother George gives us his dissertation, but I prefer going before him because he's always kind of deep. So I want to go definitely before him. So thank you for recognizing me before Brother George.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So I will say.
Wait. Are you gonna let me go first? I'm real quick.
You said you wanted to go after. My fault.
I'm definitely not going after you. You can forget that. You're the headliner, man. No. Okay, so I just wanted to say two things. I wanted to say, number one, the biggest thing I think about whenever I even look at my students sometimes, and I'm thinking of things, I always say the reason why we can't do a lot of things is because we've been taught not to be creative. And I think being creative is like the number one thing. When you look at Bloom's taxonomy, it's at the top, being creative. When you're talking about being a business owner, you need to be creative or you're just going to do the same thing someone else has been doing. So I think what happens is we train our children to not be creative because there's so many things that you cannot do until it doesn't even allow you to even be creative. So now you become this grown man saying you want to be a business owner. Well, what do you want to do? You have to create your advertisement. You have to create. All of these things come from the word creativity or create. And I think that's kind of what holds us back a lot because we have so many rules, so many things, but so many rules of things that you cannot do. And so I think that's probably our number one. And when you say, why can't we write our own scripture? I think that's still a part of being creative to know how to put that in words for someone to even read it. So then there lies that other part. We have to teach our kids to be creative. And sometimes what I've heard people do, parents will do, they'll say things, oh, I do allow my son to decide what he's going to do. Last week, I asked him, which sport do you want to play? Well, you basically told him it has to be a sport. So it's like versus saying or watching your kid and seeing what it is that he gravitates to or what he does, and then say, okay, because I believe that's where the success in our lives come from, when we see the direction versus trying to steer them in the direction, living our lives vicariously through the kids because we didn't get to do it. So now I'm going to make sure my child does it. And the last thing I wanted to say was I was a little influential on a boys group that we're starting in my school. The principal wants to call it the Gentlemen's Club. And I thought to myself, so are we teaching 10-year-olds how to be gentlemen? Like, they're just 10. They're not thinking that type of thing. So I think sometimes that's a reason why I think there was a study that showed that when other races look at Black kids, they think of them as like much older than where they are. And I think a lot of that comes from us teaching them many things way before they need to know them. And so I was influential, but I don't know if that people disagree with that. You might want to teach a 9-year-old to be a gentleman versus just how to be a good kid, but that's it. So thank you so much. And Brother George, I appreciate you allowing me to be an opener as you're the headliner, my brother.
We got 9.
Thanks for that dissertation, Carlton.
Yeah, Carl, we share the stage, brother. We share the stage. What I want to say is about writing, creating their own scripture, and I think Carlton said it best: creation, right? There's power in words, and I want to say that part of that goes back to not necessarily understanding the worth that we have. It's kind of like, and I'll say it respectfully. It's kind of like the prostitute that works for the pimp. She herself mentally thinks that she's doing a good deed and that her worth is based off of selling her body off. And a lot of times mentally, when we start to, there's a fear of success. Something I go along with, and I speak to my clients about, is fearing success and fearing the limelight, because once the limelight is shined on you, what happens is you expect that there's going to be an expectation for you, and the responsibility behind that is too much for a lot of people to bear. Honestly speaking, I think that the Bible, to me, it's an acronym: basic instructions before leaving earth. And I think it's the greatest book of poetry ever written, right? There's crime, there's a whole bunch of, betrayal, there's a lot of stuff. And the most important thing in the Bible that states, and it goes back to what you were saying, Dr. Black, was made in his own image, right? So we're created in the image that God supposedly created based off of his own. So a lot of times the responsibility of being one's own God and creating your own destiny and understanding that you have that power, and not just living on, well, I'll just live like this because this book said so. Pretty much what happens is you create a diminutive portion of who you are, and you live on that. So you never surpass your greatness or even touch your greatness, because you're constantly waiting for somebody else to say that you're great. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, what I say is the Bible is a great way to kind of give guidance to certain people's lives. But nonetheless, there's not one book that should ever be referred to as, this is my life based off of this book. So this book tells me to let this person punch me in my face. I'm just going to let him punch me in my face because this book said so. A lot of history is based off of documented lies that have been documented throughout life. And now we are living those lies based off of the fact of the hypnosis of our brains, what we've been taught. And we've been taught that since young. So by all means, we have that power within self. We just got to understand the value that we carry within ourselves and in the unity of the community that we live in.
Yeah, I knew y'all was gonna show up and show out. I gotta fly out in 6 minutes. Brother Jerome, what you got?
My brother put it out there. He put it out there for you. Yes, peace, George. There's two things, right? One is, what came to mind with speaking is, you ever heard people say, there's an old down south saying, they say, oh, the white man ice is colder.
Oh yeah, the white man.
This is the indoctrination that we receive, right? And the other one is, Malcolm X used to say, he spoke on how Black men in slavery, when the slave master got sick, he would say, we sick. We sick, master. See what I'm saying? So that we internalize a lot of that stuff throughout our community, because we became the vehicle of what they taught in the society. Like I said, we emulate society higher than any other group of people. And I'm like, so therefore what he's saying about us calling each other the N-word, that's all the stuff that they indoctrinate us with to feed to each other.
Yeah.
They won't destroy each other. I didn't see one white person run up there January 6th. Cops had guns, but getting stabbed. I ain't gonna shoot my brother, though. I ain't gonna shoot the white man. If it was us, we would have been shot dead. That's my piece.
There. Okay, I don't know if Derek can talk just yet. Ron?
That's pretty funny, but okay. I really, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I was just kind of wanted to expand on what Jerome was saying. Basically what the room is saying in terms of how we devalue ourselves, and like one of the more popular displays of in my opinion, of what that was like Will Smith and Chris Rock, in terms of like, how's it so prominently displayed that like we feel like we have license to devalue ourselves more like anybody else, like they do, in the sense that like I don't see any other group of I don't see any other like individuals having some sort of exchange like that, and with millions of people watching, but we do it every day. Like we shoot each other. I grew up in the projects in Brooklyn, and it's like you could do whatever, but if it was a white person coming around, it's like they got the complexion for the protection. Like you keep your crazy in check when they around, and it's like you bar none. But when it comes to us, because I remember like going out to New Jersey. Just like back in the days, it was like outlets weren't that big, and they had them in New Jersey. Me and my buddy, we took our summer youth money, 14 years old, trying to get some clean clothes for the for the new school year. And then the only other two black kids we saw stepped to us and was like, "Yo, what y'all got in them bags?" And I was like, "Look around, like everybody else got more than us." Like I'm not I don't understand why you hate yourself. This is me at 14 years old, so this is what you get. But and we didn't get robbed, but it was kind of like, why are we so hateful, other than the fact of like it's been ingrained in us, and that passiveness to accept like abuse comes from the teaching, and historically they would take out parts of the Bible that they didn't want the enslaved individuals to sort of be optimistic about. It was more like, just be submissive, just accept whatever the hell we give to you. And it's just a great conversation. I just wanted to jump in and share some thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you all. I want to be respectful of Dr. Black's time, and I got to run to another author interview, but it was really great to catch back up with y'all. I knew inviting Dr. Black was gonna get the room going. I'll see. He's actually writing that new Bible, by the way. He is writing that book inspired by Black folks. So I can't wait to have that, and hopefully we can get him back again for that. But I'm gonna go ahead and close this out tonight. But we will reconvene, I believe, in 2 months, is what me and Derek said. That gives us time to spend with the books. If y'all want, we could spend some more time with this book, whatever y'all kind of want to do, because it's a ton of stuff in here that makes us really start having those type, like how we were trying to decide by ourselves, for ourselves, about the N-word, is the work that I think this book does. That's what, when you put,
and I'd be happy to come back if y'all want me.
Yeah. So if we want, we get a thumbs up. we can schedule for the next one to come right back and knock out a few more. We got food essays.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Y'all just let me know.
I'll leave it there. But thank you so much, Dr. Black. Derek, I don't know if you can talk
Thanks,
yet.
Dr. Black. Yeah,
There you are.
I'm on a train. I'm on a train. We come back.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna
everyone just get into the whole thing of the Black church as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll reach out to Dr. Black after I get a little bit later and